What time is it? And it's time to talk about the most pressing matter of our times. Is Sharpay Evans the villain or the victim of the High School Musical franchise? Over the past few years, the internet has come to the consensus that Sharpay is an unfairly maligned woman of the early aughts. She was just trying to do her show, and here come these wildcats come and steal it from her, they say. Well, I would say that
the situation's a lot more nuanced than that.
Sharpay, whatever her middle name is, Evans, was first introduced to the world in 2006 in the classic DCOM High School Musical. She is introduced as a foil to our two leads, Troy and Gabriella. Sharpay and her twin brother Ryan have been in multiple school productions and are apparently presidents of the drama club. We start the movie with Sharpay signing up for the auditions and passive-aggressively telling Gabriella that if they wanted to audition, they would be great supporting roles. Ryan sees Troy looking at the audition list and immediately tells his sister that Troy was looking at their audition list. Sharpay and Ryan worry that Troy and Gabriella are encroaching on their show, so he and Sharpay attempt to divert Gabriella away from the theater. They look her up on Search the Internet and find out that Gabriella was a brainiac at her old school, so they use that information to get her into the school science club. During the auditions, Sharpay and Ryan give the best audition, of course, as they are seasoned thespians. I only know that term because of this movie and The Sims 4. They perform a more upbeat version of the song What I've Been Looking For, and it's really good. I still have this song on my playlist. Kelsey, the pianist, tells Sharpay that if she were going to get the part in the play, she imagined the song being much slower. And Sharpay immediately shuts her down. Troy and Gabriella, despite missing the audition, sing the original version of the song, and Miss Darbus, who I guess was just lurking around the corner even though she acted like she was in such a rush to leave, hears them and gives them a call back. This causes Sharpay to have a literal breakdown in the school hallway. Sharpay and Ryan then stalk Gabriella and Troy and overhear the song that Kelsey wrote for them and decide they must put a stop to this. They convince Miss Darbus to move the date of the auditions to the same day as the basketball game in the Scholastic Decathlon, so that Troy and Gabriella will miss their chance to audition. No, it had nothing to do with Sharpay wanting to test their priorities. It's so they can't audition. I thought that was obvious from the movie, but apparently not. Sharpay and Ryan perform Bop to the Top, and at the last minute, Troy and Gabriella perform their song Breakin' Free, and I guess get the part with Sharpay and Ryan as their understudies. Despite the fact that Sharpay doesn't really change by the end of this movie, she still sings along with everyone, and we're all in this together. In High School Musical 2, it's summertime, and Sharpay has decided to make it her mission to snatch Troy away from Gabriella. She sings about how she wants
fabulous
and gets him a job at her family's country club. But there's a catch. Mr. Fulton, the country club's manager, has also hired the entire East High student body. Sharpay orders him to
make them want to quit.
In my opinion, he doesn't really do anything to make them want to quit. He just tells them what their job duties are, but in like a stern way.
You'll handle member activities. Martha! Chopping, cutting, preparing plates. Always address our members as Mr., Mrs., or Miss. Do clock in and out on time. 3 infractions of any kind, and your employment is terminated.
If anything, he just acts like most managers that most adults have. But throughout the movie, we see that Troy, because Sharpay really wants to fuck him, is getting special treatment. So every time Troy and Gabriella break the rules, Gabriella is the one who gets in trouble, not Troy. Sharpay constantly interferes in Troy and Gabriella's relationship by using her power to control his time. She uses her family's influence to get Troy in touch with college scouts, which seems nice on the surface, but she clearly has ulterior motives. She forces him to go to dinner with her and her parents and pressures him into singing with her at the country club's talent show. Then tries to throw it back in his face later when he tells her that singing with her is not a part of his job because it's not. And she says, well, you promised. Because for some reason in the HSM universe, if you make a promise, you're not allowed to break it, even if it's to your boss who's low-key harassing you. During all this, Ryan becomes, in my opinion, rightfully jealous of Troy because Sharpay has basically tossed him to the side even though they were supposed to perform together for the talent show. So Ryan decides to become a wildcat or get Chaz dick, I don't know. Troy and Sharpay see Ryan helping choreograph the Wildcats on the song they're going to perform at the talent show. And Sharpay asks him,
when did you become one of them?
So Sharpay goes to Fulton and tells him to send out a memo to the staff that staff will not be able to perform in the talent show and will have to work the night instead. This causes a guilty Troy to find himself in a golf course and quit his salary job and go back to being a waiter. Sharpay, upset, tries to get Ryan to perform with her again, but it doesn't work. Ryan then tricks her, or betrays her, as the Sharpay apologists say, and Troy and the Wildcats perform at the talent show, and even though Sharpay didn't perform, Sharpay almost wins the trophy until she decides to give it to her brother, who, in my opinion, deserved it. Sharpay didn't even perform. Why would she have won? In High School Musical 3, Sharpay is once again threatened by her competition when Miss Darbus tells Troy that he is being considered for a scholarship at Juilliard. She tells Ryan that they could have it all and convinces him to try and flirt with Kelsey to get the song that she's writing for Troy and Gabriella, which doesn't make any sense because they're all performing in the play, so she could have pitched her own song or something, but whatever. She finds out that Gabriella got into some honors program at Stanford and tells Troy about it, which is framed as her being devious. I mean, if anything, she's just being nosy, but whether Sharpay told him or not, Gabriella would have still left for the honors program, so whatever. The plot of this movie is dumb. Honestly, HSM 3 is really the only one where I can say Sharpay isn't the villain. Like, she doesn't really do anything in this movie, if we're being honest. Anyway, Sharpay doesn't get the Juilliard scholarship, her brother does, but she does get into U of A and will help Miss Darbus with the theater department in the coming fall. So based on all that information, I've always wondered where this theory that Sharpay was the victim actually came from. It's 2019. It's time to admit that Sharpay Evans was not the villain in High School Musical. High School Musical fans are defending Ashley Tisdale Sharpay on Twitter. The real villain of High School Musical is Sharpay Evans actually the victim of the High School Musical franchise? See the fan theory that's changing everything. Top 5 reasons Sharpay isn't the villain of High School Musical.
Okay.
So what exactly makes Sharpay a victim? Well, according to Miss Mojo...
5. She gets Troy a summer job.
Confirm.
Okay, true. She does get Troy a summer job, as I stated before. But why is she doing that exactly? Oh, right. She's doing it to get closer to Troy in the hopes that they can finally be together.
Granted, Sharpay has other motives, as she wants to get closer to Troy.
I like that Miss Mojo acknowledges this, but basically decides that that little detail isn't important.
When you look at the big picture, though, she does more to support Troy's future than many other characters.
Sharpay is helping Troy with his future, but how exactly does that make her a good person? I guess that depends on what you define as a good person. I do not personally feel that doing good things for someone with ulterior motives in mind makes you a good person.
Newsflash, douchebags, I'm a good person. Do what I can for you all the time.
Sharpay isn't helping Troy with his future because she genuinely wants the best for him. She's doing it so that she can have leverage over him, so that she can remind him what she has done for him if he ever rejects her.
After everything you made me do that you didn't ask for, you pay me back with rejection, pain, and loss.
That doesn't make her a good person. Troy is very aware that Sharpay likes him, and this puts him in a very uncomfortable situation where he feels he can't say no to her due to all that she's done for him. That's not a fun situation to put someone in. It's also very manipulative and gross. Almost every scene they have together in this movie, you can just see the visible discomfort that Troy has.
Let me hear you say it too.
Say it, or I'll kill your husband. I'll do it, I'll gut him like a fish.
You're a good person.
Oh, thank you.
Reason number 2.
Number 4. She liked theater before it was cool. When the popular jock decides that he wants to be a singer, however, theater quickly becomes the coolest thing on campus.
Sure, okay. Troy brought more attention to the theater. That's one way of looking at it. However, I look at it a little differently. It's pretty clear from the beginning that Sharpay and Ryan are very entitled. They constantly refer to the play as their show and the audition list as their audition list. In the beginning of the first High School Musical, Sharpay signs up purposely covering almost half the page. When Kelsey politely tells her how she imagined the song, Sharpay snaps at her and insults her, telling her how many school productions she's been in and that she has no right to be suggesting anything to her. In every movie, it is clear that Sharpay isn't very confident in herself and is actually very insecure. She can't handle the slightest bit of competition to the point that it causes her to scream at the top of her lungs in the school hallway. I imagine the other kids at school were probably afraid to even audition for the school's plays, especially when it's clear that Miss Darbus favors them over everyone else. Also, Sharpay is not a nice person. She's very snobby and thinks that she's better than everyone else and is very rude to people for no reason. Zeke, who for some reason is extremely kind to her, is constantly met with rejection and rudeness from Sharpay. I'm not saying she has to like him back, but her attitude towards him is highly unwarranted. Would you be interested in the theater if it was essentially dominated by these two? I wouldn't. Troy is actually very kind and tries to be welcoming to everyone, and he was probably a breath of fresh air for a lot of the other kids at school. He helped make everyone feel like they could try new things regardless of whatever clique they belonged to. Sharpay didn't.
This is not what I want. This is not what I planned. And we gotta get things back where they belong.
Reason number 3.
Troy and Gabriella have other priorities. Like we were saying, Sharpay's entire universe revolves around musical theater, which is something we can't say for Troy and Gabriella.
Okay, fair. But are we forgetting what the overall message of High School Musical was? The whole point of the movie is to tell the kids watching that you are allowed to have multiple interests. You can like theater and basketball.
But you're a playmaker, not a singer, right?
Did you ever think maybe I could be both?
The film theorist makes a point about how Gabriella is so inexperienced that she completely freezes on stage when they're supposed to perform Breakin' Free.
This girl is so inexperienced that she freezes up at the freaking audition.
I can't do it, Troy. Not with all these people staring at me.
Oh, you can't do it, can ya? Well, it's not like people are gonna be staring at you if you're the lead character in a musical or anything.
So are we saying that if you have stage anxiety, you should just forget it and never try again? That's part of Gabriella's arc. She's a shy girl who needs to break out of her shell, and she does by the end. She had a moment where she felt she couldn't do it and then realized she could. That's the whole point. Are we forgetting that this is a kids' movie?
They not only show up to auditions late, but unprepared as well.
And true. Troy and Gabriella arrived late to the callback audition, but who cares? I swear everyone who defends Sharpay always brings up this point. It's like one of the main things people point out when they talk about this. They literally arrived like a minute late, and everyone acts like they showed up an hour late. It's not like they cut the lights out and Miss Darbus was on her way to her car. They were barely a minute late. It's not that big of a deal. Also, they were the only other people who had a callback. I'm sure Miss Darbus can wait for 2 minutes. Reason number 4.
Sharpay has more training than Troy or Gabriella. As for Troy and Gabriella, their experience solely consists of singing together on the spot at karaoke night. They don't even take any singing lessons before auditioning.
So now you have to have years of singing and dancing experience to perform in a high school play. How dare Gabriella and Troy not take singing lessons? What? I think it's pretty clear that everyone in this movie is middle to upper class, as they are in every teen movie. Can't have pores in a teen movie. But for the sake of the argument, let's say they weren't middle class. Say they aren't the type of people who can afford to just take singing lessons. Are we saying other people who can't afford that or don't have the time to do that don't deserve a chance to be in the school play? That's certainly an odd point to make, isn't it?
What's the message there? That some people naturally have everything handed to them and people who work hard to achieve their dreams just need to accept it?
Yeah, they do have to accept it. Also, they didn't have anything handed to them. It's not like after they initially auditioned, Miss Darbus just gave them the parts. She gave them a callback because she thought they were good. And Gabriella and Troy worked hard for their callback audition too, did they not? We see them practicing and rehearsing the song with Kelsey throughout the movie, do we not? I don't understand the point they're making here.
In Sharpay's shoes, most people would probably feel cheated.
Sharpay wasn't cheated. She was met with competition for the first time in her life, and she lost.
No one has beaten out Sharpay for a musical since kindergarten.
It's almost like they're implying that Sharpay should have everything handed to her because she's such a natural on the stage. No, other people deserve a chance too. She doesn't own the theater.
You own the theater?
Reason number 5.
She doesn't act like a diva in the end.
Yeah, but she still acts like a diva throughout every other HSM film. The only reason I'd say Sharpay becomes nice and accepts her defeat is because there isn't really anything else for her to do. This doesn't automatically absolve her of her actions. People try to use her congratulating Gabriella and helping her with vocal exercises as a reason why she's not a diva actually. This scene, according to the film theorists, is why Sharpay is actually nice.
She isn't discouraging the pretty new girl from auditioning. In fact, she even says that they welcome new people into the club, going so far as to say that there's lots of roles.
Are we really gonna act like we don't understand what passive-aggressive bitchiness is? This is not Sharpay being nice. This is her being petty. She doesn't say, hey, you should sign up if you want. The drama club is really cool. She tells them they'd be good supporting roles, aka I'm going to be the lead and don't even try to come for my part. Let's not forget how often Sharpay and Ryan refer to the play as theirs, as if they wrote it. That's not her being welcoming, that's being entitled. We all know what entitled means, right?
Her brother totally betrays her in the second film.
So, she betrayed him. I swear, every time Sharpay defenders bring this up, it's like they're deliberately ignoring the events of High School Musical 2. Like, are we forgetting how Sharpay treated her brother throughout this movie? She treats him like shit. They were supposed to perform together in the talent show, and she completely tosses him to the side and replaces him with Troy. She doesn't even let him down nicely either.
What about our song? What about Humu Humu?
Changing plans.
What am I supposed to do with my Tiki Warrior outfit?
Save it for Halloween. Go to a Luau, sell it online. I don't know.
And then when Troy tells her he's no longer singing with her, she runs right back to him. Ryan was just giving her a taste of her own medicine. Sharpay deciding to give him the trophy is probably the most character growth I've seen from her.
But she still gives him the talent show award as a sign of love.
I choose to see this as Sharpay realizing how mean she was being and deciding to give her brother credit where credit is due. In HSM 2 and 3, Ryan is the one choreographing a lot of these performances, which to me says that he is the one who probably choreographed the dances he and Sharpay did in the first HSM. His contributions are most definitely not appreciated by Sharpay. Sharpay treats him like a dog. She's constantly bossing him around and doesn't mind him being her partner so long as he doesn't overshadow her.
Imagine first audition after college, I get the lead.
Apart from me?
Well, of course.
Yeah, right.
You and I, all the fame.
Sharpay, and what's his name? But where do I fit into this?
With you, we can win.
But in the meantime, keep an eye on those Wildcats.
Miss D said that there's only one scholarship. There's two of us.
We're twins. They're gonna have to take us both. Polish her glasses, buy her some ruby slippers, take her to prom. I don't know. Just do it.
Hey, I know everyone thinks that I'm Sharpay's poodle, but
Ryan getting the Star Dazzle Award and getting the Juilliard Scholarship to me is the movie's way of rewarding the unsung hero. He deserved the trophy, he deserved the scholarship. In High School Musical 2, she constantly uses and abuses her power as the owner of the country club. Almost every bad thing that happens in this movie is because of Sharpay. When Troy tries to go on a date with Gabriella, he arrives extremely late due to the fact that he was forced to go to dinner with Sharpay and her family. And in the extended version of the movie, he's forced to watch her perform the song she and Ryan were supposed to do for the talent show, which makes him even later for his date. She gets him a promotion so that he can give her private golf lessons, despite the fact that she doesn't need them because she already knows how to golf. She uses her power to force him to sing with her in the talent show. Many defenders dismiss this as not a big deal, but it is. If your boss gave you a promotion and then made you go on a date with them, you would probably be very creeped out and very uncomfortable, right? It doesn't matter if it's just a talent show. Troy doesn't want to sing with her, and she's doing everything in her power to manipulate him into her life. You would think Sharpay would have enough self-respect to just accept the fact that Troy clearly doesn't want her and just perform by herself. But she doesn't because, like I said earlier, Sharpay is a deeply insecure person who can't handle rejection or competition. She's also apparently so insecure that she can't even perform alone. Her main fear in this movie is that the Wildcats will steal her talent show. Let's not forget how she orders Mr. Fulton to be rude to the staff in order to make them quit their jobs and leave. If I feel bad for anyone in this movie, it's Mr. Fulton.
No discussion, Miss McKessie. This is a business. Welcome to the world of adults who wish to keep their jobs because they have mortgages they wish to pay, tuition bills, car payments, etc., etc., etc. So sometimes we have to perform tasks, however unpleasant, that are necessary for that all too important paycheck to land in our all too empty pockets.
He's constantly stressed out by having to be harsh on these poor teenagers who did nothing wrong to him or to Sharpay. I thought we all decided that rich assholes abusing their power with their money was bad. But when it comes to Sharpay, I guess that's all fine and good. She also bullies Kelsey into giving her the song she wrote, Gabriella and Troy, which she had no right to do.
Actually, it's not available.
Repeat?
Well, it's something I wrote for Troy and Gabriella, just in case they decide.
You're an employee, not a fairy godmother. Let's have it.
Kelsey did not have to do that. The talent show has nothing to do with her job. But Sharpay tells her that she is staff and is therefore not allowed to say no to her. None of the Sharpay apologist articles or videos ever bring this up, though. I understand people genuinely like Sharpay, but let's not just deliberately cut out important information to make some kind of a point. It's disingenuous. People say that Sharpay is actually the victim if you watch the movie more closely. These points don't indicate to me that you're looking more closely at these movies. It's showing me that you're doing the exact opposite. Sure, if you fast forward through most of High School Musical 2, I can see how you would feel that Sharpay was betrayed by her brother. But if you actually pay attention to how Sharpay acts in this movie, you will see that her being classified as the villain is a correct classification. I mean, Sharpay was honestly at her worst in this movie. People point out how Sharpay always ends up losing in every HSM movie, and yes, she does. Because she should. Again, this is a kids' movie. What kind of message would these movies send if they let the mean girl get the part in the play or win the Star Dazzle Award? Sharpay doesn't win because she doesn't deserve to win. A lot of the people feel that she does deserve to win because she's talented and hardworking. And when you consider how obsessed Americans are with hard work, it all starts to make more sense. As Americans, we are conditioned to believe that being a hard worker is the height of morality. We equate hard work with being a good person.
I'm a good person, yes, it's true. I'm a good person, better than you.
Sorry, but I don't care how hardworking or talented you are. If you're mean, you're mean. You can be a bully, and no amount of hard work is going to make me forget that. You see, the case of whether Sharpay is the victim or the villain is interesting to me because she reminds me of a certain other blonde.
Tracy Flick. Tracy Flick. I'd seen a lot of ambitious students come and go over the years, but Tracy Flick, she was a special case.
Tracy Enid Flick was introduced to the world in 1999 in the classic Alexander Payne film Election. Election centers around a miserable social studies teacher, Mr. McAllister, who gets a little too involved in the student body election when he convinces the popular jock to run against his least favorite student. That student being
Tracy Enid Flick? I know.
Tracy and Sharpay are essentially the same character, to me at least. They're both blonde, both ambitious, both hardworking and talented. They're both highly disliked by most of the people at school. They're both snobby and entitled, and both of their stories center around their glory being stolen by a nice jock. Air quotes around stolen, of course. Tracy feels she is a lock for school president as no one else is running against her at the beginning of the movie. But when Mr. McAllister, who hates her guts, convinces Paul Metzler, a dumb but super nice football player, to run against her, which then causes his little sister to run against the both of them, Tracy is suddenly faced with competition. When Tracy gives her election speech, she comes prepared, hardly ever looking at her cue cards, addressing the audience, and speaking as persuasively as a real politician. Paul gives his speech written from a crumpled up piece of paper and never looks up at the audience. Tammy Metzler doesn't even have a speech prepared and just wings it, telling all the students not to vote and that they shouldn't care about this election at all. This causes all the students to stand and cheer, making Tammy the most popular candidate. Based on that information, you could say this isn't fair to Tracy. She's the only one who really has her heart in it. She probably worked for weeks on that speech and clearly wants this the most. We get the sense that Tracy is of a lower class than Paul, and she expresses how much she hates that people like Paul Metzler have everything handed to them. Tracy feels that this country was built by people just like her. People who pick themselves up by their bootstraps and
don't have everything handed to them on a silver spoon.
I smell entitlement. Now, to be fair, I would say Tracy does deserve this more than Paul and Tammy. Paul was basically pressured into running by Mr. McAllister, and Tammy only ran out of spite. She's also literally encouraging the students not to care about the election. But is that to say Paul and Tammy shouldn't run? When Tracy sees that Paul is running for president, she angrily confronts him, demanding him to answer for why he's running as if she owns the election or something. She does sign his petition to be a good sport, I suppose, but she still acts like she's deeply insulted by him having the audacity to run against her. When Tammy runs, Tracy complains about it to Mr. McAllister as if Tammy isn't allowed to run because...
She's not qualified. She's just a sophomore. Did you know that?
Anybody who gets signatures in on time can run, and she got in just under the wire.
Well, as Mr. McAllister said, she is qualified, so what's the problem here?
These are a bunch of burnouts. And what's this one? It's illegible. I can't even read that.
Okay, so now her petition is invalid because some of the signatures were from a bunch of potheads. Huh. That doesn't make any sense, Tracy. I'm sure some of the people who signed your petition were potheads too. Who cares? This is where Tracy's snootiness comes in. Why is Tammy somehow not allowed to run because of your high standards? See, to me, this is what my problem was with Sharpay. If you're so confident and talented, why are you suddenly so threatened by the slightest bit of competition? If you're going to be an entertainer or, God forbid, a politician, you're going to deal with competition. It's kind of a given. I understand that especially in the entertainment industry, it can bring out the worst in people. I mean, just look at Sally Reed in the show Barry. And it's also not easy for women to get ahead in these professions, so I can empathize with Sharpay to an extent. I also can empathize with Tracy. I mean, the poor girl is groomed and assaulted by her teacher, Mr. Novotny, and Mr. McAllister, who was his friend, blames her for it when Mr. Novotny is fired from his job.
This isn't the time or the place to get into it, but there is, for just one example, a certain former colleague of mine who made a very big mistake. A life mistake. That old or young, we all make mistakes. I also think that certain young and naive people need to thank their lucky stars and be very, very grateful that the entire school didn't find out about certain indiscretions that could have ruined their reputations and their chances to win certain elections.
You also get the sense that Tracy probably faces a lot of pressure from her mother. In the beginning of the movie, Tracy says that her mom wants her to do all of the things she wanted to do in life but couldn't. Whenever a parent says something like that, I get very worried. Those are often some of the most controlling parents. After Mr. McAllister throws away 2 of Tracy's ballots and Paul is presumed the winner, Tracy's mom tells her that maybe if she'd taken some of her suggestions about the speech or had more posters, she would have won. Tracy had amazing posters. She made a whole ass banner that she later ripped on accident, but still, I'm sure it was incredibly time consuming. And her speech was great. Tracy's mom could have just told her that she was sorry she lost and that it'll be okay. Instead, she makes it seem as though it's Tracy's fault that she lost, even though she technically only lost by a vote. In spite of all this, I still don't think this should just absolve Tracy. She's also not a nice person. She's one of those people who choose to stand alone because they feel other people don't work as hard as they do. She's not someone I'd want to be friends with. Does she deserve to be the president of the student body? Sure. Does that make her the hero of the story? No. There's this idea that being extremely talented and exceptional somehow means you have a right to be absolutely horrible to other people. You see this in the way people idolize figures like Stanley Kubrick, who had a history of being emotionally and verbally abusive towards many of the actors he worked with, especially women. He and many other famous men like Woody Allen, Alfred Hitchcock, or John Lennon are often referred to as geniuses. Their toxic behavior and shitty treatment of the people in their lives and the people they work with is forgiven because to some, it is considered a right they have because of their talent and the art they produce. I think this is why these defenses of Sharpay and sometimes Tracy bother me. They reek of white feminism and girl bossiness. Whatever. This idea that women should be allowed to get away with being awful because men have gotten away with it, or that if men can be empowered and abuse their power, so should women. That is not something I stand by and not something anyone should. Sharpay constantly trying to step on her competition, or Tracy destroying Paul's posters and then trying to blame Tammy for it because she knows Tammy was known to be a troublemaker is not feminism. These are not the feminist icons we should be rooting for. You know who we should be rooting for though?
Who?
Elle Woods was introduced to the world in 2001 in the iconic movie Legally Blonde. The movie centers around Elle, who is dumped by her boyfriend, Warner Huntington III, who sounds exactly like the type of person you think he sounds like. He tells her that he needs to be with someone serious and that
if I'm gonna be a senator by the time I'm 30, well, I need to marry a Jackie, not a Marilyn.
Quite literally saying to her face that she is
too blonde?
So Elle decides that in order to get Warner back, she will get into Harvard and uproot her life to Cambridge, Massachusetts. Which, now that I'm thinking about it, sounds almost exactly like the plot of Crazy Ex-Girlfriend. Upon arrival, Elle is immediately judged and discriminated against for her conventional attractiveness, her hyper-femininity, her blonde hair, and upbeat personality. Which, as I'm saying it, sounds ridiculous, I know. Obviously, being a hot, white, blonde-haired, blue-eyed person does not exactly put you in the margins. However, there is something to be said about the way conventionally attractive women are objectified and assumed to be vain and stupid. Just think about how often people put so much emphasis on a woman being smart and beautiful, as if the two existing at the same time is a rarity. Elle finds out that Warner has already gotten engaged to another woman named Vivian Kensington. She meets Paulette Bonafante, which is such an awesome name. Like, imagine your last name being Bonafante. That just sounds like the name of a famous 1940s actress or something. Anyway, Paulette Bonafante encourages Elle to
steal the bastard back.
As she attempts to steal the bastard back, she continues to clash with Vivian and her other classmates who are honestly being unnecessarily cruel to her. But this doesn't get our girl Elle down. Elle decides to prove to Warner and everyone at school that she belongs there just as much as they do, and decides to start taking her studies more seriously. She starts doing better in class and appears to really take a liking to the law. She gets accepted into her professor's internship where they will be helping Professor Callahan with a high-profile case. Elle realizes their client is Brooke Taylor Wyndham, who was a famous fitness instructor that Elle looked up to, as she helped her go from, wait for it, a size 6 to a size 4. Because for some dumbass reason in the early 2000s, a size 6 was code for being fat. Brooke reveals to Elle in confidence that she was getting liposuction during the day of her husband's murder and lied about how she lost weight in order to sell a workout plan. When Brooke tells Elle her alibi and asks her to keep it a secret, Elle proves her loyalty by keeping her promise even when it most definitely will help Brooke's case. This is honestly one of the only parts of the movie that frustrates me. Brooke says she'd rather go to prison for murder than lose her reputation, but I mean, she kind of deserves to lose her reputation. She actively lied to women about how she lost weight and then made a shit ton of money off of that lie, which, if that's not a metaphor for famous celebrities promoting bullshit fat diets on Instagram, I don't know what is. Elle doesn't even criticize her for this and still admires her. I don't think there's anything wrong with Elle seeing the good in Brooke and still wanting to support her, but Brooke being let off the hook for being a fraud is a little frustrating to me. Elle's faith in Brooke is honestly very sweet, and I love that Elle sticks to her morals. Everyone kind of makes fun of her for staying true to her morals. Even Callahan is frustrated with her, which... To go off on a little tangent, I do not understand why Callahan hates Brooke so much. Like, he blatantly expresses how much he does not believe her and seems to genuinely dislike her, and it's like, dude, this is your client. She is paying you to be her lawyer and you don't even pretend to have any faith in her. Like, it's so weird. Anyway, Vivian is impressed by Elle's loyalty and the two finally become friends. After Elle is sexually harassed by Callahan and decides to drop out of law school and move back home, Brooke drops Callahan as a lawyer and brings on Elle, who, with her knowledge of hair care, wins the case and saves the day. Warner, after witnessing this, decides that Elle is the woman for him and tells her that he wants her back, and Elle tells him,
but if I'm going to be a partner in a law firm by the time I'm 30, I need a boyfriend who's not such a complete bonehead.
Elle Woods, to me, is the answer to Sharpay Evans and Tracy Flick. All three of these women have very similar qualities. Blonde, check. Ambitious, check. Played by Reese Witherspoon.
Check, check.
And all of them could fall under the girl boss umbrella. I think what separates Elle from Sharpay and Tracy is that despite her work ethic and ambition, this never causes Elle to become cruel. Our vision of ambition as a society is so masculinized. We feel that in order to get ahead, you must be ruthless, you must be ready to stab people in the back, you must be prepared to lose friends, and prepare for people to hate you. There's this expectation that unlikability is just par for the course when you're trying to get to the top. Obviously, the term unlikability is extremely gendered. Men are often referred to as unlikable. And it is interesting how female characters who are eager and ambitious are always the villain of the story. Tracy Flick is essentially a cartoonish caricature of Hillary Clinton, from the way she dresses to the way she talks. Her eagerness to win is portrayed as something that causes women to become these angry and bitter monsters hell-bent on a warpath. We are meant to like Paul because he is the opposite. He doesn't take it too seriously, and because he's the nice, lovable dope with no ill will towards anyone. I think what's refreshing about Elle is the film is not vilifying her for being aspirational, and she never forgets who she is at her core. Throughout the movie, she continues to be kind to people even when almost everyone around her is laughing at her, simply because of how she presents herself. When Vivian finally starts being kind to her, Elle doesn't even hesitate to return that kindness. She instantly becomes friends with Paulette, helps her get her dog back from her shady ex-husband, and encourages her to pursue her crush. She shows herself to be incredibly generous, maybe too generous, to people who really suck. It would have been really nice if throughout every HSM movie, Sharpay and Gabriella could have slowly become friends. It's a real shame that the two never have a song together. I'm not necessarily pushing the idea that all women need to just be friends with each other, because that idea is also problematic in its own way. But if there's going to be conflict between two women, it needs to be written better and it needs to make sense. Sharpay and Gabriella's conflict doesn't. The movie plays on the classic and annoying blonde versus brunette trope. Legally Blonde subverts this very dumb trope by having Elle and Vivian forget their differences and soften to each other, because they both finally realize that Warner really isn't that special. It would have been nice if Tracy could have had this moment too. As much as I understand her frustration, I still don't understand why she couldn't have been more cordial to Paul. He goes out of his way to be nice to her and even votes for her, and her vitriol towards Tammy is also nonsensical. Tammy did not do anything to her. There is definitely an issue with portraying ambitious women in this way. There's an even bigger issue with people then trying to reclaim these characters as victims, actually, because they feel they were unfairly maligned. Tracy and Sharpay were not unfairly maligned. It's implied that Tracy becomes a Republican by the end of elections, so I'm not sure what there is to reclaim there. She also never really learns anything by the end of the movie.
But one day maybe you'll learn that being smart and doing whatever you need to do to get ahead, and yes, stepping on other people to get there, well, there's a whole lot more to life than that. And in the end, you're only cheating yourself.
Damn, don't you hate it when the misogynist makes a good point? I hate to agree with Mr. McAllister here, but he's right. There is a lot more to life than that. As they say, it's lonely at the top. Tracy is aware of this, but doesn't see it as a problem.
I've come to accept that very few people are truly destined to be special, and we're solo flyers. I guess it really is like Dave said. If you're gonna be great, you've got to be lonely.
By the end of election, Tracy talks about how no one signed her yearbook and how she felt lonely during her senior year and first year of college. My theory is that Tracy was definitely a gifted child who was always expected to be great throughout her life, and was conditioned not to prioritize anything else but greatness. This then caused her to become this stuck-up antisocial person who looked down on anyone who wasn't like her. She, like many of us, was told that being excellent was more important than being a decent human being, that it was more important than being happy and enjoying life. And when it comes to Sharpay, I feel there is a lot of pretty privilege at play here. Would people be as defensive of Sharpay if she wasn't as pretty as she is? If she didn't dress the way she dressed? Sharpay did have some of the best costumes, some of the best songs, and is the most memorable character from the HSM franchise. But I failed to see how that makes her the hero. Or the victim. People act the same way when it comes to Blair Waldorf from Gossip Girl, another extremely rich, entitled, and spoiled mean girl. If these women didn't check off the conventionally attractive boxes, would people still idolize them? I doubt it. It's crazy how much we let people get away with when they're easy on the eyes. And obviously Elle's attractiveness definitely had an impact on why she got accepted into Harvard, regardless of her GPA or LSAT score. So I think that's definitely worth mentioning here. But Elle, to me, wins the girl boss competition here. No matter how intelligent or goal-oriented she is, she never forgets to be kind to others and always wants other people to feel good about themselves. And in my personal opinion, there is nothing more important than that. Because as a wise woman once said, people will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, people will never forget how you made them feel.
Summer, 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 summer.